The bus outside my window was louder than usual when Elena asked, "Dad, are you enjoying the cabin by Lake Tahoe?" I looked at her and realized she truly believed it existed. I had never been there. And right then, Nathan walked in, already knowing something was about to break. My name is Samuel Brooks. I'm 64 years old. I spent most of my life fixing things that were already worn when I touched them. Warehouse floors, delivery trucks, old school boilers that rattled like they were coughing up their last breath. I worked nights when the pay was better, weekends when the rent was late. I learned early that your hands can grow old faster than the rest of you. Mine did. The joints stiffened first. Then the strength left quietly, the way water leaves a cracked cup, drop by drop. I raised Elena alone after her mother died. She was 9, too young to understand why the house suddenly sounded empty, even when the television was on. I learned how to braid her hair by watching other fathers in grocery store parking lots. I learned which cereal was cheapest per ounce. I learned how to say, "maybe next month," without letting my voice break. I sold the car, then the second-hand furniture, then the little patch of land outside Stockton that I once thought we'd grow old on. Every year, something smaller replaced something bigger. That became normal. I didn't tell Elena when my back started to fail, or when my left knee locked in the cold, or when the doctor said I should stop lifting anything heavier than a grocery bag. I told her school stories instead. Funny ones, safe ones. Stories where her father was still strong, still steady, still someone she didn't need to worry about. Children should climb forward, not look back to see if the ground is breaking behind them. Elena climbed fast. She was good at school. Not the kind of good that asks for praise, the quiet kind. The kind teachers notice when the room is loud. Scholarships came, then interviews, then offices with glass walls and water that came out of machines instead of faucets. She started flying places, first for school, then for work, then for events that had banners and sponsors and people who shook hands like they were signing invisible contracts. She called at first, every Sunday night, then every other week, then whenever her calendar allowed a square to be empty. I kept the same phone for 8 years. The battery died before the day did. I memorized the places in my apartment where the signal was strongest. By the sink, near the window, standing on one foot sometimes helped. I never told her that either. When she talked, her world sounded clean. Hotels, conferences, dinners where people ordered things without prices next to them. She said words like initiative and impact and long-term vision. I said words like bus pass and discount day, and the landlord fixed it, mostly. We learned to translate each other. I would say, "I'm fine." She would hear, "You don't need to worry." She would say, "Everything's taken care of." I would hear, "You don't need to ask." We didn't fight. We didn't argue. We didn't drift apart in any dramatic way. We just slowly stopped standing in the same kind of weather. She sent pictures instead of stories, fundraising dinners, group photos, smiles framed by people who all looked rested. I learned her life by the background colors: white tablecloths, blue stage lights, black suits. Sometimes I tried to imagine the sound in those rooms, the clinking of glasses, the low laughter, the way people lean closer when money is involved. I never told her I stopped going to the dentist. I never told her I ate the same soup 3 nights in a row because it was already open. I never told her that the heater in my building worked better when I left the oven door cracked. Not because she wouldn't help, but because she would. And once your child starts saving you, something inside a parent quietly steps aside. Pride doesn't announce itself. It just takes a seat in the corner and clears its throat when you reach for the phone. So I kept my voice steady. I kept my sentences short. I kept my problems small enough to fit between her meetings. Elena thought she had taken care of me. I thought I had protected her from me. That was the deal we never spoke out loud. Distance doesn't always look like miles. Sometimes it looks like matching smiles on different screens. Sometimes it looks like two people who love each other very much, standing in two rooms that are both warm, but never opening the same window. By the time she co-founded Bright Horizon, her life had a rhythm I couldn't follow. Flights instead of bus routes, calendars that filled months ahead, conversations measured in outcomes instead of days. I learned her schedule the way other fathers learn their children's faces, through reflections, through headlines, through invitations I never accepted because I didn't own a jacket that belonged in those rooms. I told myself this was success. I told myself this was what all those double shifts were for. I told myself losing her to that world was the same as giving her a future. It sounded noble when I said it alone. It sounded practical when I repeated it often enough. And it felt easier than admitting that I missed her in ways money could never organize. So when she stood in my kitchen that night, asking about a place I had never been, I understood something before either of us said another word. We hadn't lied to each other. We had simply stopped checking. And somehow, in all that careful distance, we both believed that was love. Nathan stepped in like he always did, as if he were entering a meeting he had already prepared for. He adjusted his jacket before anyone spoke, not because it was crooked, but because it gave him a second to choose his tone. "Okay," he said softly. "Let's slow this down." He looked at Elena first, not at me. "This isn't the place for this conversation." His voice was calm, polished, the kind that makes people doubt their own urgency. "We're tired. It's late. Emotions are high. Whatever this is, we can talk about it at home." He said home like it was a solution, like the word itself could erase what had just been said. Elena didn't answer right away. She didn't move either. She was still standing near the kitchen counter, one hand resting on the edge like she needed something solid to keep her upright. Nathan tried again. "Samuel," he said, finally looking at me. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Nothing more. These things happen when information passes through too many people." He smiled when he said it, a small smile, professional, harmless. "I'm sure we can clear it up." Clear it up. Not explain, not answer. Clear it up. Elena turned to him slowly. "You told me he had a cabin." Nathan nodded, once. "And he says he's never been there." "Which tells us something got lost," Nathan replied. "That's all. Something got lost. Not a lie, not a fabrication. Something misplaced, like a receipt or a file." He took a step toward her. "Let's go home," he said. "We'll talk privately." That word again, privately. Elena shook her head. "No." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "We're talking here." Nathan frowned for the first time, just a little. "Elena, please, this isn't appropriate." "For who?" she asked. "For your father," he said quickly. "He doesn't need to be in the middle of this." He gestured toward me as if he were protecting me. I stayed where I was. I had seen this before, not in him, in managers, in landlords, in people who knew how to move pressure away from themselves and place it somewhere safer. Nathan turned back to Elena. "We can discuss details later in a calmer environment." "No," she said again. "You can answer me now." He let out a breath. Slow, measured. You're letting a small issue become something bigger than it needs to be. A small issue. A place that didn't exist. A story that didn't match. A father who had never been informed. Small. Elena crossed her arms, not defensively, but as if she were keeping herself from stepping backward. You told me you arranged housing for him. Yes. You told me he stayed there. Yes. He says he hasn't. That doesn't automatically mean anything dishonest happened. Nathan's eyes never wavered, his voice never shook. It means we need context. Context. Another soft word. Context is what people ask for when they don't want conclusions. Elena didn't raise her voice. Then give it to me. Not here. Why not here? He hesitated. Because this isn't the right setting. Why? He paused again, longer this time. Because it involves personal matters, financial matters, things that don't need an audience. Elena glanced at me. He's not an audience, she said. He's the subject. That landed differently. Nathan shifted his weight. This is exactly why we should go home, he said, so we can talk without putting anyone on the spot. Putting anyone on the spot. That was the phrase. People who control stories hate witnesses. They prefer quiet rooms, rooms where tone can be managed, where reactions can be softened, where facts can be rearranged gently. Elena stayed where she was. Answer me, she said. Did you show me photos of that cabin? Yes. Were they photos of something you rented for my father? They were photos of a property that met the description of what we discussed. Her eyes narrowed. That's not what I asked. Nathan smiled again, barely. You're focusing on the wrong detail. No, she said. I'm focusing on the first one that doesn't match. Silence stretched between them. I watched Nathan's jaw tighten for a fraction of a second. Not enough for anger, enough for calculation. Elena, he said, you're reacting emotionally. No, she replied. I'm reacting precisely. That was the moment I knew she wasn't going to leave. Nathan tried a different approach. Look, he said gently, whatever paperwork is involved, I handled it. That's my role. You trusted me to manage the operational side so you could focus on the vision. The vision. Big words for small actions. I did trust you, she said. And you still can, he replied. But trust also means giving me space to resolve complications. Trust also means not hiding things, she said. He raised his hand slightly. No one is hiding anything. Then say it out loud. He lowered his hands. Say what? Say why he doesn't know about the place you said he uses. Nathan inhaled through his nose. Because plans change, he said. Because logistics are complicated. Because sometimes intentions and execution don't line up perfectly. Did you tell him? Elena asked. That wasn't necessary at the time. Why? Because it was an administrative matter. She stared at him. My father's life is not an administrative matter. Another silence, this one heavier. Nathan stepped back. Elena, you're making this personal. She nodded. Yes, that's the problem. No, she said. That's the reason. He looked at the door. We're going home, he said. Now. She didn't move. He turned to me. Samuel, he said, I think it's best if we continue this conversation later. I didn't answer. I wasn't sure what answer he expected. He wanted agreement, or submission, or at least a delay. I stayed quiet. Elena noticed. She turned to me. Dad, she said, did he ever talk to you about housing? I shook my head. Did he ever ask what you needed? No. Nathan interrupted. That's not fair. I considered his dignity. I didn't want to impose. By deciding everything without him? Elena asked. That's not what this is. Then what is it? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice had changed, slightly harder. This is you questioning my integrity in front of your father. She nodded. Yes. That's inappropriate. That's honest. You're crossing a line. You crossed it first, she said. I'm just standing where you left it. Nathan straightened. We're done with this conversation for tonight. No, Elena said. We're just starting. He stepped closer to her. You don't understand the consequences of what you're doing. I understand exactly, she replied. You don't want witnesses. You want control. That's not true. Then stay. He hesitated. Stay and answer. He looked at the door again, at the quiet apartment, at the small kitchen, at the space where stories couldn't hide behind glass walls. This is not the place, he repeated. Elena took a breath. This is the only place that matters, because here, the story had a body, a life, a person who could say yes or no, and manipulators hate that. They hate rooms that don't bend. They hate people who don't leave. They hate light. And Nathan, standing in that small kitchen, finally looked like a man who had run out of shadows. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I reached for the drawer beside the sink, the one that sticks unless you pull it just right. I slid it open and took out my notebook, the small brown one. The cover was cracked from being folded too many times in too many pockets. I placed it on the table. Elena watched me. Nathan did not. I don't keep much, I said. Just what helps me remember where I need to be. She stepped closer. The notebook wasn't neat. It wasn't organized by color or category. It was written in my handwriting, tight, slightly slanted. The kind you develop when you write standing up, leaning against walls, waiting for buses, filling time between errands. Monday, bus 23, library shift, free clinic, 3 p.m. Tuesday, groceries, electric bill due. Wednesday, community center, dentist check canceled. She turned a page. Friday, bus 19, food pantry. There was no cabin in there, no weekend trips, no reservations, no names of lakes, just places I could reach with a bus pass. Elena looked up. You write everything, she said. So I don't forget, I replied. And so I don't pretend. Nathan finally glanced at the notebook. Just once, like someone checking a watch they already knew was running. That doesn't prove anything, he said. People don't write down vacations. I write down everything that costs me effort, I answered. He didn't respond. I walked to the small cabinet by the door and pulled out a stack of envelopes. Old utility bills, rent receipts, notices from the clinic. I set them next to the notebook. I didn't spread them out, I just placed them there. They had weight on their own. Elena picked one up. It was a bus pass receipt. Another was from the free clinic near Florin Road. Another was a repair estimate for the heater that never got approved. She didn't speak. She just kept reading. These are from this year, she said quietly. Yes. Every month. Yes. And you've never left the city? No. Silence. Nathan leaned back against the counter. You're creating a narrative, he said. Anyone can collect papers. These aren't papers, Elena replied. These are habits. She picked up my notebook again. You didn't even know he wrote this, she said to Nathan. He shrugged. He's independent. He's invisible, she corrected. That was the first time Nathan looked unsettled. Not angry, unsettled. I went to the window and pointed. The bus stop is there, I said. I leave at 8:10 every morning. The driver knows me. He slows down when my knee acts up. Elena followed my hand. The grocery store is 2 blocks that way. Tuesdays are discount days. She nodded. The clinic is 3 stops past the library. They don't ask for insurance. She swallowed. The heater doesn't work when it's below 40. I use the oven. Nathan straightened. That's not relevant. It is, Elena said. Because it tells me he's here, not in Tahoe. Nathan pressed his lips together. You're turning small details into accusations. No, she replied. I'm turning your story into something that can be measured. She looked at me again. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't answer immediately, not because I didn't know, but because some truths feel heavier when spoken. I didn't want to interrupt your life, I said. You built something important. She closed her eyes for a second. You were part of that, she whispered. Nathan stepped forward. This is emotional, he said. We need to stay rational. Elena opened her eyes. This is rational, she said. This is the first thing tonight that is. She gathered the papers and the notebook and stacked them carefully. This is what truth looks like, she continued. It doesn't shout. It doesn't decorate itself. It just exists day after day until someone finally looks. Nathan crossed his arms. You're ignoring the bigger picture because I'm starting with the smaller one, she replied. The one you said didn't matter. She held up the notebook. You can't fake this for years. You can't rehearse this. You can't stage this. She flipped to a random page. March, bus, clinic, pantry. She flipped again. July, same. Again. October, same. She looked at Nathan. Where is the cabin in this? He didn't answer. Not immediately. There are administrative delays, he said finally. Sometimes plans shift. Elena nodded slowly. Then show me where the shift is. He frowned. That's not how operations work. That's exactly how they work, she replied. Everything leaves a mark. She turned to me. Did anyone ever ask you for signatures? For forms? For confirmations? I shook my head. Did anyone ever tell you you were part of a program? Number. Her jaw tightened. Then your name is being used without your presence. She turned back to Nathan. That's not a misunderstanding. He straightened. That's an interpretation. No, she said. It's a contrast. She gestured around the apartment. This is a life. It's consistent. It's modest. It's visible. She tapped the notebook. This is continuity. She lifted one of the receipts. This is traceability. She looked at him directly. If you have something that contradicts this, show it. He paused. I don't carry that kind of documentation on me. She nodded. But you carry authority. Another pause. That's not the same, she said. Authority needs proof to be clean. I had never heard her speak like that, not with anger, with precision. She turned back to me. Do you mind if I take pictures of these? Go ahead. She pulled out her phone, photographed the notebook, each page, each receipt, each envelope. Nathan watched. You're escalating this, he said. I'm grounding it, she replied. You're making it public. I'm making it real. I sat down. My knee was starting to ache, but I didn't say anything. Ina finished and slipped her phone into her pocket. Do you see what's happening? She asked him. You're collecting anecdotes, he said. I'm collecting a baseline, she replied. So when we look at numbers, they don't float. They land. He didn't understand yet, but he would. I watched her look around the room again, not like a visitor, like someone finally taking inventory. The chipped countertop, the old heater, the empty corner where a sofa should have been. This wasn't evidence in a courtroom sense. This was evidence in a human one. The kind that doesn't need explanation. It just needs honesty. And for the first time that night, I saw my daughter stop asking who was right and start asking what was true. Elena didn't say anything at first. She just sat down at the small table and opened her laptop. The glow from the screen cut across the room like a second light source, colder than the lamp above us. Nathan stayed standing. I stayed where I was. She logged into the Bright Horizon system. I could tell by the way her shoulders changed. That posture wasn't for family. It was for work, for control. "I just need to check something," she said. Not to Nathan, to herself. The dashboard loaded. Charts, categories, clean lines. The kind of interface that makes everything look organized, responsible, safe. She clicked on a tab labeled Beneficiary Programs, then another one. Then she stopped. "Dad," she said slowly, "your name is here." I didn't answer. I didn't know what she meant yet. She turned the screen toward me. There it was. My full name, my address, my age, my status listed as Senior Support Recipient. Below that were categories: housing assistance, medical support, transportation allowance, monthly care stipend. Each one had a green check mark beside it. Fully funded, active, dispersed. Elena stared at the screen. "You're receiving help," she said. I shook my head. "I'm not." She refreshed the page. Same result. "These payments go out every month," she said. "They're approved, logged, signed." She scrolled. "There's a housing allocation for you, a monthly amount that would cover a small apartment in a better area." I looked around my kitchen. She scrolled again. "There's medical support, enough to cover regular checkups, medication, physical therapy." I flexed my knee without meaning to. "And transportation," she continued. "There's a stipend for rides, not bus passes, private transport." Nathan cleared his throat. "Elena, this is administrative," he said. "It doesn't always reflect real-time usage." She didn't look at him. "Dad," she asked, "have you ever received money from Bright Horizon?" "No." "Have you ever signed any form?" "No." "Has anyone ever explained a program to you?" "No." Her fingers stopped moving. She whispered, "Then this is a lie that's being updated every month." Silence. Nathan stepped forward. "You're jumping to conclusions," he said. "These are internal records. Sometimes funds are allocated before services are activated." She finally looked at him. "For how long?" she asked. He hesitated. She read from the screen. 2 years. She closed the laptop halfway, then opened it again. "This says my father has had full housing support for 24 months. She glanced at the heater. "You're telling me this is just a delay?" Nathan pressed his lips together. "Elena, you're emotional right now." She nodded once. "Yes, because this isn't theoretical. He's sitting right here." She turned back to the screen and clicked into transaction details, one line at a time. Vendor payments, service contracts, disbursement confirmations. "These aren't placeholders," she said quietly. "These are processed transactions." Nathan leaned closer. "You're misreading how nonprofits operate," he said. "Program expenses don't always go directly to beneficiaries." She looked at him. "Then who do they go to?" He didn't answer immediately. "To infrastructure," he said. 2 operations. To whom? She repeated. Another pause. She sat back. So, on paper, my father is supported. In real life, he isn't. She closed the laptop. That's the difference between charity and performance, she said. I watched her breathe in, slowly, as if steadying something inside. She turned to me. How long have you been using the free clinic? 3 years. And the food pantry? Since my hours were cut. And the bus pass? Always. She nodded. So the system says you're cared for. She gestured at the room. But reality says you're surviving. Nathan crossed his arms. You're oversimplifying. No, she replied. I'm finally simplifying. She stood up. You know what hurts the most? She said. Not the money, not even the lie. She looked at me. It's that if I had just called you more, if I had just asked real questions instead of assuming, this wouldn't have lasted a week. Nathan frowned. This isn't about phone calls. It is, she said. It's exactly about phone calls. She turned back to the laptop and opened a blank note. I believed love meant trust, she continued, and trust meant not checking. She typed a single line. Trust without presence is just assumption. She closed the screen. Dad, she said softly, when was the last time I asked how you were actually living? I didn't answer right away, not because I blamed her, but because I understood. You asked if I was okay, I said. You didn't ask how. Her jaw tightened. I thought providing meant protecting. She looked at Nathan. You thought image meant control. He shook his head. You're twisting this. No, she replied. I'm untwisting it. She took out her phone. Do you know what would have stopped this? She asked. One conversation. She held the phone in her palm. One unexpected visit. One question that didn't fit the story. She looked at me again. If I had called and said, Dad, are you actually living in the place they told me about? She paused. Would you have told me the truth? Yes. She closed her eyes. That's all it would have taken. Nathan scoffed. You're reducing a complex organization to a personal mistake. No, she said. I'm showing how fragile your complexity is. She placed the phone on the table. Systems hide behind structure. Lies survive in distance. But reality collapses the moment someone asks the right person the right question. She turned to me. I didn't protect you, she said. I trusted the wrong evidence. I shook my head. You trusted from far away. She swallowed. That's not trust, she said. That's delegation. Nathan opened his mouth to speak. She raised her hand. Don't. She picked up the laptop again and reopened the dashboard. This is where love went missing, she said. In these check marks. In these green statuses. In these words that replaced presence. She scrolled. They look responsible. She looked at me. But responsibility isn't a spreadsheet. She closed the laptop gently. I used to think charity started with funding. She shook her head. It starts with a question. She picked up her phone and unlocked it. She didn't call anyone. She just held it. Asking doesn't mean doubting, she said. It means staying close. She looked at Nathan. And anyone who tells you that love doesn't need verification is protecting themselves from being seen. He stared back. She stood straighter. From now on, she said, I don't trust reports before I trust reality. She turned to me. And I don't trust systems that don't know your kitchen, your bus stop, your doctor. Your heater. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't say anything. She took a breath. One call, she said. That's all it takes to keep love honest. She glanced at the screen one last time. And that's why this scares people like you, she said to Nathan. Because truth doesn't need permission. She closed the laptop. The room felt quieter after that. Not peaceful. Clear, like something false had finally lost its place to stand. Nathan started talking again, the way he always did when things got uncomfortable. Calm, measured, like a press conference without cameras. You're interpreting internal data emotionally, he said. Bright Horizon is a complex organization. You can't reduce operations to one individual case. Elena didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue back. She reopened the laptop. Complex systems leave simple trails, she said. You just have to know where to look. She clicked into another tab. Approval logs. Rows of dates appeared. Names, digital signatures, timestamps. These are the people who authorize expenses, she said. Board members, executives. You. Nathan leaned closer. That doesn't mean misuse. It means responsibility, she replied. She clicked again. Program expense routing. More data. Every dollar that claims to serve a beneficiary passes through at least 3 layers, she continued. Request, approval, disbursement. She looked at him. If my father's support was real, it would leave marks in all 3. She scrolled. Request, present, approval, present, disbursement. She stopped. This doesn't go to him. She turned the screen slightly so I could see. The recipient account wasn't mine. It wasn't even an individual. It was a service vendor. Nathan straightened. That's normal. We work with partners. Elena nodded. Then let's follow the partner. She clicked the vendor name. Another screen loaded. Contracts, invoices, payment schedules. She scrolled slowly. This vendor is paid to provide housing coordination, medical assistance coordination, and transport facilitation. She paused. Coordination. Nathan didn't speak. That word matters, she said, because it means money can be spent without a single service ever reaching the person it's meant for. She scrolled further. No delivery confirmations. She looked at him. No sign-offs from beneficiaries. She turned to me. Did anyone ever visit you to assess your living conditions? No. Did anyone ever ask you to sign a receipt? No. She faced Nathan again. So the system says help was coordinated, but no one checked if help was delivered. He exhaled. That's a procedural gap. No, she replied. It's a design choice. I watched her posture change. Not emotional, focused. This is what silent power looks like, she continued. Not shouting, not threatening, just reading the system the way it was built. Nathan crossed his arms. You're cherry-picking. She shook her head. I'm following the trail you assumed no one would. She clicked into board review minutes. Meeting notes appeared. Agenda items, budget approvals. This is where accountability should live, she said. If something is wrong, it shows here. She scrolled. There's no mention of beneficiary verification. She looked at him. No field audits, no phone confirmations, no random checks. Nathan frowned. These things are implied. Implied systems protect the powerful, she replied. Explicit systems protect the vulnerable. She leaned back slightly. Power that speaks loudly needs obedience. Power that works quietly needs proof. The room was silent. Then she added, almost calmly, and proof is what your system is missing. Nathan opened his mouth. She raised her hand. Wait. She clicked into another section. Program expense breakdown. Bars appeared. Percentages. Here, she said. This is where it becomes visible. She pointed. 82% of senior support program spending goes to operational partners. She looked at me. That means only 18% reaches actual people, and even that has no confirmation. Nathan shifted his weight. That's within legal thresholds. Legal doesn't mean ethical, she replied, and legal doesn't mean accurate. She scrolled. This vendor you use, she continued, is registered under a holding company. She clicked again. That holding company shares an address with one of our logistics consultants. She paused. And that consultant is paid directly by you. Nathan's jaw tightened. That's common in nonprofits. It's common in laundering responsibility, she said. Not money. Responsibility. I felt the room change, not with anger, with clarity. She wasn't fighting him. She was outgrowing the space where his words worked. This is why loud power is afraid of records, she said, because records don't argue. They just connect. She stood up. Let me say this simply. She looked at him. If my father were actually being helped, his life would look different. She gestured around. It doesn't. She pointed to the screen. So the system is lying to itself. Nathan laughed softly. You're constructing a story. She nodded. Yes, one that survives contact with reality. She closed the laptop halfway. Your power relies on people assuming complexity equals legitimacy. She closed it completely. My power comes from knowing that complexity always leaves footprints. I had never heard her use that word before. Power. She turned to me. You don't need to raise your voice to be believed, she said quietly. You just need consistency. She turned back to Nathan. You speak in frameworks. I speak in records. He straightened. You don't understand how organizations function. She replied, I understand how they hide. She reopened the laptop. There are 3 things every nonprofit fears. She raised one finger. Audit trails. Second finger. Beneficiary verification. Third finger. Board accountability. She looked at him. You control image. I control process. Silence. Then she added, and process outlives performance. Nathan tried again. You're escalating this unnecessarily. She nodded. Yes, because truth doesn't move unless someone pushes it. She clicked into user access logs. More data. Who has permission to approve program expenses? She read aloud, Exec Director. She looked up. You. She clicked again. Who can authorize vendor contracts? She didn't look this time. You. She clicked once more. Who approves exceptions to verification protocols? She closed the laptop slowly. You. Nathan didn't speak, not because he had nothing to say, but because every word now needed proof, and proof wasn't on his side. She turned to me. This is what power really is, she said. Not money, not authority, not position. She tapped the laptop. It's the ability to stay calm long enough to read the system that was designed to be ignored. She looked at Nathan. You thought silence protected you. She shook her head. Silence protects the person who listens better. I shifted in my chair. My knee hurt, but I didn't move. She continued. You created a structure where people trust labels. She glanced at me. Senior support. She glanced at the room. Housing assistance. She glanced at the heater. Medical coverage. Then she met his eyes. But labels don't heal. Actions do. Nathan took a step back. You're going to damage the organization. She nodded. If the organization survives on absence of truth, it deserves damage. She closed the laptop. The sound was soft, final. This is the difference between loud power and quiet power, she said. Loud power tells people what to believe. Quiet power shows them where to look. She turned to me. You raised me to work with my hands. She paused. I learned to work with information. She looked back at Nathan. And information doesn't care who you are. It only cares if you were careful. He stood there, surrounded by his own system, unable to use it as a shield anymore. And I understood something I had never been able to name before. Power wasn't about winning. It was about being so steady that the truth had space to stand. Elena didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She didn't point a finger or raise her voice. She simply closed the laptop and stood up. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough to change the room. This isn't a conversation anymore, she said. It's a process. Nathan tried to speak. She didn't stop him, she just didn't respond. She took out her phone and walked a few steps toward the window, where the light was better. I watched her scroll, not in a rush, not shaking. Calm, like she was scheduling a dentist appointment. I'm requesting an independent audit, she said. Full financials, vendor contracts, program verification, no internal review. Nathan laughed lightly. That takes months, and it's unnecessary. She nodded. That's why it works. She typed. Next, she said, I'm calling a nonprofit compliance attorney, one who specializes in misrepresentation of beneficiary services. He shifted. That escalates things. Yes, she replied. Truth only moves when someone carries it uphill. She pressed call and put the phone on speaker. It rang. She waited. She didn't look at him. She was done talking to him. While the phone rang, she turned to me. Dad, I'm going to ask you something, she said quietly. I nodded. Did anyone ever tell you that you were eligible for housing assistance? I shook my head. Did anyone ever explain transportation support programs? No. Did anyone ever offer medical cost subsidies? No. She nodded slowly. The call connected. She introduced herself calmly, gave the organization name, gave her position, asked for a consultation. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now. She ended the call and sent an email request to the board. Subject line, immediate governance action required. No anger, no drama, just facts. Nathan took a step closer. You're going to destroy everything we built. She looked at him. No, she said. I'm going to find out what was real. He opened his mouth. She continued. Everything that survives this was honest. Silence. She turned back to her phone and opened another message. This goes to the state charity regulator, she said. They oversee donor misrepresentation. Nathan's eyes narrowed. That's not necessary. She typed anyway. I'm not asking permission. She sent it. One message, one line. Requesting oversight review of Bright Horizon initiative regarding beneficiary service claims. Then she turned to me again. Dad, there's something else, she said. She hesitated for the first time. Not fear, recognition. I found a record, she said, from last year. She opened a document and handed me the phone. It was a support approval notice. For me. Housing supplement. medical support, transit stipend. All approved, she said. All legitimate. I looked up at her. I never used it. She nodded. I know. Nathan spoke quickly. He declined assistance. It's documented. She didn't look at him. She looked at me. Why? She asked softly. I took a moment. Because that's what truth asks for. Time. Because someone else needed it more, I said. She closed her eyes. Not long. Just enough. That money was meant to help someone, I continued, and I wasn't in danger. I had a roof. I had food. I had time. Her shoulders shifted slightly. Not collapsing, adjusting. And I didn't want to be the reason another person waited longer, I said. Nathan stepped forward. You see, he declined. That's not misuse. Elena turned slowly. That makes it worse. He frowned. How? Because it means the system had the ability to help, she said, and chose to display help instead of deliver it. She looked at me again. Dad, you turned down something real because you believed resources were scarce. She looked at Nathan. You created scarcity to protect image. The room felt smaller, not claustrophobic, focused. She turned back to me. You didn't want to be a burden, she said quietly. I nodded. And I thought you had taken care of everything, she added. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She continued. That's how kind people get used, she said. They don't ask. They don't complain. They don't verify. She looked at Nathan. They trust. She straightened. Justice doesn't need revenge, she said. It needs doors. Nathan scoffed. You think a few emails and calls will undo years of work? She nodded. Yes, because your work was built on silence. She tapped her phone. And silence breaks faster than structures. She sent another message. To donors, a small group first. Transparency update, audit notice, temporary suspension of new campaigns. No blame, just disclosure. Nathan raised his voice. You're ruining our credibility. She met his eyes. Credibility that can't survive truth is performance. He took a step back. You're emotional. She smiled faintly. This is the calmest I've ever been. She walked to the door. Nathan, she said, you need to leave. He laughed. This is my home. She nodded. Not anymore. He hesitated. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just waited. Power doesn't rush. After a long moment, he grabbed his coat. Not in anger. In calculation. He walked out without another word. The door closed. The sound was ordinary, but the space it left behind was different. Elena leaned against the table. Not weak, just grounded. I don't feel victorious, she said quietly. I shook my head. Justice doesn't feel like winning, I said. It feels like breathing again. She nodded. She sat down and looked at her hands. They were celebrating numbers, she said. I was celebrating appearances. She looked at me. And you were living truth without knowing it. I smiled faintly. Truth doesn't announce itself, I said. It just stays consistent. She wiped her eyes once, not dramatic, not breaking, recentering. Rich people sleep in bigger rooms, she said, but honest people sleep easier. I nodded. Money builds walls, I said. Integrity builds rest. She exhaled. I thought strength was control, she said. I waited. Now I see strength is clarity. She stood again. Tomorrow everything becomes public. Are you afraid? I asked. She shook her head. I'm done being impressed by noise. She looked around the room. This place taught me something. What? That justice doesn't need fists, she said. It needs keys. I smiled. She opened the door to the hallway and turned back. Dad, she said, you didn't raise me to be loud. She paused. You raised me to be right. Elena sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the floor. Not like someone who had lost an argument, but like someone who had finally understood what the argument was really about. The room was quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, but heavy. She rubbed her palms together once, slowly, like she was warming her hands in winter. I wasn't just lied to, she said. I trained myself not to look. She didn't raise her head. I kept calling it doing good. I kept telling myself I was helping people. And all the while, the one person who needed my presence most was sitting right in front of me, invisible. I stayed where I was. I didn't move closer. I didn't interrupt. Some truths need space to land. She swallowed and let out a breath that sounded tired, not dramatic. I built a life where everything was scheduled, filtered, photographed, reported. Every moment had to be useful. Every conversation had to have a purpose. Somewhere along the way, I stopped having conversations that were just real. She looked at me then. I stopped asking how you were, not because I didn't care, but because caring meant slowing down, and slowing down felt irresponsible. She shook her head slightly. That's the lie no one talks about. We tell ourselves that staying busy means staying good, that as long as we're doing something important, the people we love can wait, that silence is kindness, that distance is respect. Her voice stayed steady. But silence is only kind when nothing is wrong. When something is wrong, silence becomes permission. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. I didn't mean to abandon you. I just chose comfort over curiosity and called it maturity. I looked at my hands. They were still the same hands that fixed broken chairs, tightened loose screws, carried groceries up 3 flights of stairs. You aren't trying to hurt me, I said. You were trying to hold a world that never taught you how to hold people. She closed her eyes for a moment. That was all. No tears, just recognition. I kept thinking that love meant providing, she said. Money, security, reputation. I never asked myself if love also meant showing up without a plan. She lifted her head again. When Nathan said everything was fine, I accepted it because it was convenient, because it matched the story I wanted to tell about my life, that I was capable, that I was responsible, that I had built something meaningful. She pressed her lips together. I didn't want to ask questions that would force me to admit I had been absent. I didn't want to see you struggling because that would mean I had failed in a way no fundraiser could fix. I shifted in my seat. People like us, I said quietly, we don't want to take. We don't want to be seen as needy, so we stay quiet. And people like you, who are trying to be strong, assume quiet means okay. She nodded slowly. That's how good people become part of bad systems, she said. Not by being cruel, but by being comfortable. By choosing peace over truth. By choosing not to look too closely at what might disturb the image they worked so hard to build. She stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the streetlight flickered. Cars passed. Ordinary life continued. "Silence feels polite," she said. "It feels safe. It feels grown up. But silence is also how harm gets time to grow. Harm loves privacy. Harm loves closed doors. Harm loves people who say, 'Let's not make a big deal out of this.'" She turned back to me. I thought staying quiet was protecting everyone. I was protecting a lie. I watched her shoulders straighten, not in anger, in responsibility. "There are so many of us walking around calling ourselves good," she continued, "while avoiding the hard questions. We donate, we volunteer, we post, we attend events, and we never ask, who is being left behind while I'm busy proving I care?" Her voice stayed calm. "We confuse activity with integrity. We confuse intention with impact." She came back and sat across from me. "I didn't lose you to the world," she said. "I stepped away from you for it. And that's harder to accept." She rested her hands on her knees. "I thought I was building something noble. I didn't notice I was trading closeness for applause." The room stayed quiet again, not empty, honest. I took a breath. "Kindness without attention is just a story we tell ourselves," I said. "Real kindness is inconvenient. It asks for time. It asks for discomfort. It asks us to risk being wrong." She nodded. "And I avoided that risk," she said, "because being admired felt easier than being accountable." She looked up at me, steady. "I won't do that again." Not as a promise, as a decision. I won't stay silent when silence protects harm. I won't step away when questions get uncomfortable. And I won't let love become something abstract. She paused. "If I'm going to do good, it has to start where I live, where I see, where I listen." I felt something settle. Not relief, not victory. Alignment. "Silence has its place," I said, "but not when someone is being used. Not when truth is being buried." She met my eyes. "Silence isn't kindness when it allows injustice to breathe. It's participation." She straightened her back. "And I'm done participating." She stood once more, not with urgency, but with clarity. "People will say I'm overreacting," she said. "They'll say I'm making things complicated, that I'm breaking peace." She looked at the door. "But peace that depends on ignorance isn't peace. It's avoidance." She turned back. "I'd rather be difficult and honest than pleasant and blind." I nodded. "That's how change starts," I said. Not loudly, but firmly. She smiled, small and grounded. "I thought silence was maturity," she said. "Now I know maturity is knowing when silence is no longer moral." The investigation didn't happen in a single dramatic moment. It unfolded quietly. Papers were reviewed, accounts were traced, phone calls were returned, audits were scheduled. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cinematic. It was slow, careful, and real. That was the first lesson. Healing doesn't arrive like a storm. It comes like a steady rain, changing the ground little by little. Elena stopped chasing grand gestures. She chose transparency. She wrote to donors herself, not with excuses, with facts. What was being reviewed? What was being corrected? What would change? Some people were angry. Some were relieved. Most were simply grateful to finally hear the truth without decoration. She restructured everything. Smaller programs, fewer layers, clear oversight, every dollar traceable, every decision documented. Not because it looked impressive, but because it made sense. She stopped trying to save the world. She started trying to be accurate. She said it once while sitting at the kitchen table, looking at a stack of forms. "I used to think impact meant scale. Now I think it means clarity." There was no pride in her voice, only alignment, like someone finally standing on solid ground after years of shifting sand. A few weeks later, she moved closer. Not into a bigger place, not into anything symbolic, just closer. Close enough to stop by without planning, close enough to walk over with groceries, close enough that visits didn't need a calendar. The first morning she came by without calling ahead, she brought coffee and 2 pastries. She didn't talk much. She didn't explain. She just sat at the small table and unfolded the paper bags slowly. That was new. No agenda, no urgency, just presence. We started going to the community center together, not as a project, not as a campaign, as neighbors. Folding chairs, sorting donations, listening to people talk about bus routes and rent increases and medical forms they didn't understand. There were no cameras, no captions, no stories to package. Just work that looked small from the outside and mattered deeply to the people in the room. Elena didn't try to lead. She followed. She asked questions. She took notes, not for reports, for memory. One afternoon she said, "I thought healing meant fixing what was broken. Now I see it means staying where things are fragile." She said it like she was surprised by her own words. Healing wasn't a conclusion, it was a habit. Showing up when no one was watching, listening when no one was applauding, choosing consistency over comfort. That was harder than any stage she had ever stood on. She stopped measuring her worth by how much she could give. She started measuring it by how carefully she could listen, by how honestly she could respond, by how quickly she could admit when she didn't know something. Healing was no longer something she performed. It was something she practiced, quietly, repeatedly, imperfectly. People asked if she felt lighter. She said no. She felt steadier. There was a difference. Lightness fades. Stability holds. She slept better, not because things were resolved, but because they were being handled. Slowly, correctly, without shortcuts. We talked one night after dinner. The dishes were drying on the rack, the window was open, traffic moved in the distance. She said, "I used to think standing up meant raising my voice. Now I think it means choosing accuracy, even when it's uncomfortable." She paused. "I don't need to be loud. I just need to be right. Right in my data, right in my process, right in my intentions." She wasn't trying to sound strong. She was trying to stay honest. That was the change. She no longer rushed toward impact. She walked toward integrity. And integrity moves at human speed. Healing didn't fix everything. Some relationships stayed distant. Some trust took time. Some questions remained unanswered. But the foundation shifted. The story stopped being about exposure and became about responsibility. The goal stopped being justice and became repair. She didn't need applause anymore. She needed accuracy. She needed consistency. She needed to wake up each day and choose truth again, even when it was boring, even when it was slow, even when no one noticed. One morning at the community center, she was stacking chairs. Someone thanked her, not for her donations, not for her status, for staying late. She smiled, small and grounded. That was enough. Healing wasn't a moment. It was a direction. And truth wasn't a speech. It was a practice. You don't have to shout to stand up. You don't have to be dramatic to be brave. You don't need a spotlight to be honest. You just need to be right. Right in your data, right in your process, right in your heart.